There's a Stephanie. And she left her skin on for the presentation. You can't see her bones. All right. So the points 1 and 2 are up here. So you want to rub these points. You can do 2 at the same time. In the middle of the collarbone, which is just in there. And she looks up while she does it. You can do this too while you're sitting there contemplating. Right? Rub these points, look straight up. And you want to keep doing some nice breathing with this. Don't do it with a held breath. Breathe through the whole process. And you need to do this, it varies depending on how out of balance your glandular system is, but you want to do this between 30 and 60 seconds. Don't touch the hands. That short circuits it. Make sure that you're rubbing the reflexes directly, but don't touch your hands. All right, good. So the next one is the pineal pituitary, up here. And in this case, she's looking up to the right, up this way. All right, so rubbing here, looking up to the right. Now, if you were doing this because you had a specific issue that you wanted to try and overcome, then you'd be thinking about that specific issue while you did all of this. It's not necessary to establish the glandular system, but in many cases it will help to make other connections in the neurology. Good. So then we have points 4 and 5 between ribs 3 and 4. So up here on the clavicle, you can call this rib 1 because rib 1 joins here and goes back. That's rib 1, 2, 3. So between 3 and 4 on both sides. And in this case, this is thyroid, parathyroid, so she'd be looking at this way. And you can do it with a smile on your face. Makes your thyroid happy. It's actually really interesting when you start working with clients to see what their facial expression is when they rub these points. Because some people are, yeah, really, and they rub other points like, well, what's going on there emotionally? So you can start to actually find emotional responses embedded or associated with these different glands. Very good. Now we'll do also the thymus here. We'll put thymus in between 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. So that's, oops, we just moved the bauble. This bendy bit just here, so we're here, now we just come up into the middle and tap, but you're looking straight forward. Good. And it needs to be a good thump. It's in the middle, right? So you can actually hear it go thud, 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 thud. Right? Because you need to be vibrating the thymus that's behind the bone. Okay? Good. Now, if you keep looking forwards and come up between the next 2 ribs, right, that's now 6 and 7 here. Yep. And again, you're looking straight forwards. All right. This is stimulating the heart and the hormones that are produced by the heart. Good. Excellent. Remember, keep breathing. Some nice big, slow breaths through the whole process. You don't want to make this a job, you know. This doesn't have to be hard work. All right. So then we go from 6 and 7 to 8, which is liver, which is under the right breast. It's actually between the 5th and 6th ribs. So this illustration is a little bit strange because the ribs are showing 5 and 6, but the breast is a bit lower because, I don't know, whoever did this illustration thought that breasts must be lower than that. So, so for women, you need to probably pull it up a bit and get onto that 5th and 6th rib. Right? Now the direction for that is, where is that? Number 8. Can you see number 8? Oh, There isn't, because it's not actually a gland. That's why. It doesn't hook into the same system. You're stimulating the liver to make sure that it can break down the excess hormones, not really that it's producing its own. That's why you don't have an 8. Okay. 9 and 10 are between the 7th and 8th ribs. Now, in men, that's going to be further around to the side because we have larger rib cages. In women, come from the breast, 6, 7, 8. It's going to be more to the front on both sides. And 10 and 11, yep, straight down. Yep. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's still straight down. Now, this will help to regulate your blood sugars, your insulin, also a lot of the factors that create the blood. Help people with their immune system and all that sort of stuff as well. And in fact, these points is where you hook in the immune system to the hormonal system. Very important. Good. Then we jump down to the adrenal glands. Now, if you start at the belly button, the umbilicus, and you go out 25 mil and up 50 mil, you have the reflexes for your adrenal glands. So your adrenals are left and right side. So you can do the right side and you look straight across to the right. You can rub both if you want to, but to start with, it's more efficient if you just rub the right side and look to the right. Because your two adrenal glands do not work as a pair. They are very different little animals and they can work very independently of each other. And so then the other side, you look to the left. Right? So left side, look left, right side, look right. Now, if you do both, you're going to have to go... No, it's just checking. You can do one side, then you can do the other. Are they sore? Anybody got sore points there? Yeah, a few sore points. This is adrenal stress. When they're sore, it means that you have too much stress in your life. You need to do something about it. Then we go down to the either side of the pubic bone. Now again, you have a splitting here. So you can do one side of the pubic bone and down to the right, and then the other side down to the left. Now you can do both and just look, down to the right and then down to the left, but you need to do both of them for between 30 and 60 seconds. 60 seconds is better. Particularly if you've had, if you know you've had hormonal stress of any sort, and that includes if you take the pill, the contraceptive pill, you'll have to do these points for at least 60 seconds, possibly more. Now, it doesn't mean that the contraceptive pill becomes of no use. You'll still not conceive while taking them, but it reduces the time of toxicity that you have from those hormones, especially with the liver. Right? Now, to start with, your liver may actually put hormones back into the bloodstream after you've stimulated it. Well, that's okay. Just keep doing it. If you feel a bit strange or wonderful or depressed or whatever after going through these points, it basically means that you need the next phase to connect them all together properly. So that's what we call phase 1, where you go through rubbing all the points in this order. You need to re-establish the hierarchy, so you do it in this order while the person looks in the eye positions, and you can do this yourself, obviously, while you look in the eye positions that relate specifically to that gland or that reflex. Okay? That's phase 1. Now, phase 2, you'll see in the, I think it's the next page in your book, is where we now take the glands and we connect them together. This is the secret. This is something that has been used in applied kinesiology to stimulate the production of hydrochloric acid. It's been used to regulate female hormones. But nobody's hooked onto the idea, until I came along, about using all of them to reset all of the relationships between all of these different glands, so that the person can then go away and fix up lots and lots of things automatically. So by doing this next phase, phase 2, people can do this as a regulation of chronic illness, stimulate their ability to recuperate, do all sorts of really cool things with their body. Even if it's, helping them with their sport or their weight training, or, something they specifically want to do, they can do these very, very easily, once a week even, can just make such a big difference in their lives. So you start at number 1, right? Start with number 1, and then you rub number 2. So you're rubbing 2 points, like we did to start with. Now in this case, you don't need the eye positions, right? Because you'll see in a second it goes much further than this. You stay with number 1 and then go to number 3. Good. Right. You stay with number 1 and you go to 3 and 4. All right. Yeah, rubbing. Right. But you're always rubbing number 1. Right. Then you keep rubbing number 1 and you can tap the thymus gland. Thud, 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 thud. Right. Keep rubbing number 1, do 6 and 7. Right. Now I'm running through this a bit faster than you would be doing it normally, because you'd be want to do this for about 30 seconds at least for each combination. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm rubbing number 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right? While you're rubbing number 1. Then you go to number 2. You rub number 1. Now, I can hear it in people's heads, but I rubbed 1 and 2 before. Why do I need to rub it again? Because where you start initiates a response, and then you get a feedback reaction from the second one. All the hormones, even left to right side, have regulatory processes between them. All of them. You stimulate one, and the other one's response back is not balanced properly. You have an imbalance in your hormonal system. So rubbing one and then rubbing the second one creates a check on this relationship, from this one to this one, and then from this one to that one, and this one to that one. So you're re-establishing this one to that one. When you go to number 2 and you go back to number 1, you're establishing the relationship from here to this one. Right? So rub number 2, right? Then you rub number 1. Now you're establishing this relationship. It's a different direction. It's a different feedback loop. And that's what makes this so amazing. So from 2, you've done 1, you've got 2 already, right? Now you go to 3. Mm-hmm. And you always keep number 2 and you go through all of the others. Right? Then you go to number 3. Right? Rub number 3 and number 1 first. Right? And then number 2. We've already got number 3, so then you go to 4 and 5. Tapping, 6 and 7. And so on. And you follow down the hierarchy. And you keep going down until you end up with the point on the pubic bone, right? You're going back to 1, 2, 3, all the other points, and you're finishing off with the other side of the pubic bone. Right? So what that is doing is setting up relationships between one gland and another, and then that gland and another gland, and another and another. that's going to be the most efficient way of reorganising this system. There are other ways of doing it, but this is, bless you, this is the best way to reorganise the glandular system. Now, if you were doing this because you had a hormonal problem, or maybe you're pregnant and you want to make sure that all the hormones are balanced, you would do this every 2 or 3 days. There's no point doing it every day, but every 2 or 3 days would be probably a good time. So if you did it twice a week, just to run through this whole process, phase 1 and phase 2, your hormones would be just great. You don't have to be pregnant to do this. You don't have to get pregnant to do this. You can just do it for whatever you want, like for sport, for example. Right? There was one guy who was like this big and this wide. He played rugby. And some of you might know it as gridiron. I don't know. Anyway, it's where these guys, run into each other, bang, and try and get the ball between 2 little sticks. Humans are very funny, aren't they, really, when you think what we do? But it's a substitute for war. So if we weren't playing sport, we'd be, fighting a war. So Bush probably needed to play football instead of getting into politics. But anyway, so the end result is this really big guy was just getting flattened. Right? And they would call him a girl. They'd call him a weakie. They'd call him all sorts of names, but the intention was that he's not a real man. The fact was he wasn't producing enough testosterone. He'd become adrenal dominated, and so his testosterone was going down as his adrenaline was going down. So I showed him how to do this, rubbing the points, eye positions, and then going through all of the points, in sequence. And in the next match, now he only did that 3 times before his next match, and in the next match they couldn't pull him to the ground. He was dragging people through the goalposts. They were still holding on to him. He said, I don't know where it came from, but I felt like Superman. Well, it came from his hormones. That's what this stuff will do. So it won't turn a Stephania into a football player, I hope. But, the resources that are in this system, these are some of the most powerful biochemicals in our body. You have hormones, you have enzymes, and you have a bunch called neurotransmitters. They're the 3 most powerful sets of chemicals in your body. And of those 3, the hormones have the strongest physiological and emotional effect. You girls know when you have, your periods, right? How your emotions get a bit strange, or if you have liver problems, your emotions get a bit strange, angry, irritable, rip your eyes out sort of stuff. That's because at the time of the hormonal changes and so on, the hormones are out of balance. Right? So if you put these hormones and you rub all the points back in the right order, the period flows easily, but the hormones are much more balanced as well, because these have a very strong effect on emotional responses. Very, very, very strongly interconnected. Like oxytocin makes you feel good, but not exhausted. Right? Adrenaline makes you feel good, but you have to do something. And once the adrenaline is exhausted, you feel exhausted. It's a tiredness. Right? And people, look, most of your clients are going to come and say, I don't have enough energy. I feel tired. 99% of them are going to be there. And the other 1% were dragged in by their wife because she thought it'd be a good idea that he had a session. So, and he's tired anyway, But you can be tired of emotions, you can be tired of physical stuff, you can be tired of mental exhaustion. You've heard of brain fag, where your brain gets exhausted. Well, you can feed your brain with all of these hormones and it just goes, poing, You feel good, you're mentally good, you're physically much stronger and able. It's really an amazing difference. So it's now question time. One of the questions I was asked already was, how would these points and balancing this relate to hepatitis? You know, because of the liver involvement. Hepatitis is an infection, but because of the infection, it can interfere with how the liver operates. So because of that, that could mean that the liver is not breaking the hormones down as it should, and that can create a secondary hormonal problem. But hepatitis doesn't cause hormonal imbalances. It may be involved, it may not. It's still a good idea with a person who has hepatitis to run through the points just to make sure that there's no hormones that are maybe aggravating them. Yeah, the question is this good for young kids who are not growing fast enough? Yes, if the reason for their not growing fast enough is hormonally based, then this will help them. And they need to do this on a regular basis, because usually what's happening is their growth hormone is being held back for some reason. Now, it could be pathological. That means some sort of infection or something like that. But what we've found is that in most cases where that's happening, not all, but in most cases, it's a result of the effects of the vaccinations that they have. And vaccinations really have a strong effect on the development of not only the hormones in young children, but the nervous system. So you want to see if they've been vaccinated and help them to overcome that, what they call vaccinosis, that follows. If it's not vaccines, it could be some medication that the mother took when she was pregnant. It's also another strong influence in that area. The other thing is that often children have the wrong diet for their body type. They're just eating the wrong foods for what they need to grow properly. Because genetically, from a constitutional point of view, we're all different. We can be classified into different sections, and each section requires a certain type of diet. And that can also help a lot. So the combination of those three things, the vaccinations, the hormones and the diet, usually allows the child to grow or get back to the normal growth cycle that it should, without having to take extra growth hormone. It's not a good idea to take any hormones because A, they may not work through digestion. B, if you're taking a hormone, it's telling the glandular system you don't need to make it. So when they stop taking it externally, they're not making it internally. So that's a worse situation. So you want to remember those things. Okay, so the question is, could you do part of it today and then the next part tomorrow and a few other parts? No, not really. Now, if you have a specific issue and the specific issue relates to a reflex point, you can rub that point only, or if you know that that point and another point are related to the specific issue, you could rub those points only and maybe other points at a later date. Yes, that would work for the specific issue, but it's not going to reset the whole system. You want to be able to do this, as complete as you can. Now, some people find that phase 2 initially takes a long time because you're rubbing one point and then all the others, then the next point and all the others, and the next point and all the others. Yeah, but actually after you get used to where the points are, it doesn't take long at all. Secondly, if you were to do number 1 and all the points today, feasibly you could do number 2 and all the rest of the points the next day. The number 3 and all the points the next day. And number 4, so you could do a section of it every day. You could do that. It will take you longer to get the effects because you want all of these feedback mechanisms to be associated to the brain as closely together as possible, because the brain then learns to put it together as a system, the way it should be, but the way it's forgot to do. There are lots of other things that it's learned to do that have interrupted the system. And because this is an innate system, you want to establish the system as efficiently and as fast as you can. So in the first few days, if you can go through and get as many of these connections done as you can, that's going to be better. Otherwise, it's going to take you months to achieve what a week would do otherwise. So the question is, can I do this on myself or can I do it on other people? Is your grandmother in the audience now? No? Well, then you'll have to do it on your grandmother, won't you? Yes, you can do this on yourself. All of these innate systems are designed to follow the picture and follow the number. And you can do it yourself. If you have somebody who doesn't have the picture and the numbers, then you'll have to. That's your job. Yes, do it on as many people as you can. Babies. Now, this is an interesting thing. When a woman is pregnant with a child and say she has hypoglycemia, and especially if she feels really good during the pregnancy, it's because she's using the insulin of the baby to support herself. So when the baby is born, it's born hypoglycemic. The same thing happens with adrenal imbalances. If the woman is hypoadrenic, the baby will be born hypoadrenic, but the mum will feel great having the pregnancy. This is where women will say, I'll get pregnant any time so long as I don't have to look after the baby. Right? Because they feel so good during the pregnancy. And it's because they're using the hormones of the baby to feed themselves, and then the baby gets born hypoadrenic, hypoglycemic, or other hormonal imbalances. So doing this on babies is very, very good, because you only have to do it for a short period of time, because their system learns so fast that you maybe only have to do it once. There have been times where I've only done this once on a child and never had to do it again, because their nervous system just is so receptive to this sort of stuff, and it's developing at such a fast rate that when you reset it, it goes in as a natural part of its genetic programming, which is there anyway. So you're just reminding the nervous system, this is how it should be. And then they do the rest. It's really good. Yeah.
Can I do that from day one first?
You can do that from day one, absolutely. You just don't press very hard. Because they're very soft and pliable, and they change shape. And they change shape for the rest of their life, actually. They never stop. Does this also help in children who have hyperactivity? Yes, very much. Because there are two things happening in the hyperactivity, actually three things. Two of them are hormonal. One of them is hypoglycemia. They're all hypoglycemics. They're all reacting. Okay, I will speak slower. If you'll put your hand up, I will speak slower. And I will say it again. In hyperactivity, there are three things happening. Two of them are hormonal. One of them is hypoglycemia. That is low blood sugar, but it's usually because their mother was hypoglycemic when she was pregnant with the child. The child will be reactive to sugars, for a start. They must not have sugar. Secondly, they're also hyperadrenic. That means they have too much adrenaline. And this is because they have allergies, which is the third thing. The allergies stimulate the excess production of adrenaline, and this compounds the problem with the reactivity to sugars. The consequence of that means they now also have problems with protein, and the protein problems get worse as they get older, so they develop more allergies to more foods. So what this does is it reorganises the blood sugar problems and the adrenaline problems, but there are other things that will need to be done to reorganise the allergy stuff. You can have a look at the workshop. Food is the best. for the allergy protocols. And the combination of this, feed the glands, which is another part of the adrenal problem, and food is the best, these three are wonderful for hyperactive kids. If you add to that combination the positive response and keen mean mind workshops, you have a really good formula for autism. So there's lots of things that you can do by taking one workshop and mixing it with another one, because they all have a specific effect, but the effect is at a very deep level. So deep level responses together in certain combinations helps with lots of different problems that a person may be experiencing. So the question is it better to do this at a certain time of the month relating to the menstrual cycle or not? No, it doesn't really matter. Now, if you have problems with the menstruation, you can experiment. Do it just before, during, after, just before ovulation, after ovulation. Experiment. Find where the nice position is and just do it there. Every time of the month, do it at the same time, and it will work remarkably well. For some women, it doesn't make any difference at all. The timing doesn't change anything, but doing it at any time changes their period. So you might find, after having done it the first time, that the period problem changes. It's not because of the timing, it's because of what it is, and it's already balanced the situation. So you just have to have a play with that and see what works best. With old people who are depressive, how long would it take, or how often would you need to do this with those people? Older people, particularly after they've gone through their change of life for women, and that's called menopause. And for men, it's called womenopause. Sorry. After that time, their hormones change dramatically. This works slower in people who have gone past menopause, but it still works. You would just have to do it over a longer period of time. But interestingly, they tend to respond to it faster. Even though, you might need to do it more often, you'll get to a point where, bang, everything changes. It's like, oh, I'm not depressed anymore, and it's done, it's finished. In fact, if you look at depression over the history of when, histories were taken, depression was maybe a once-in-a-lifetime event. A person would get depressed, they get really depressed, they're really, really depressed, and then they come out of it, and then that was it. They wouldn't do it again. But since using certain depression medications, the depression time is lessened, but they have more reoccurrence of the depression. It goes on and on and on and on. One thing that happens with older people is when you do this and they've had medication for depressions, is you'll do it for a period of time and they're not depressed. Then all of a sudden, a few weeks later, they're depressed again. But it's actually a bit different depression. So you do this again for as long as it takes, and then boom, it stops. And then it takes longer, another depression will come. And it's like they're reliving all the old depressions that were never resolved properly. Right? So, and it will actually increase their lifetime to do that. They will live longer in doing that. Because over a period of life, we get all these things pushed into our nervous system that means that we can only live this long. What we do with this sort of stuff is we take those things out of the nervous system and it extends their lifespan. And of course, it extends the quality of their experience of life while they're living. So with older people, expect to do it over a longer period of time, but look for when they start bringing the old problems back, because they will, and then you do it again. Would it be good to do this in our old people's home every week? Absolutely. They will look forward to it. because they don't have a lot to look forward to in those places anyway. But if they have something that really makes them feel good, you just do it and you'll see the response. They love it. They absolutely love it. Very good. So the question is, do you have to do phase 1 and 2 at the same time? That's just the Italian version, don't worry about it. It's a good point, because once you've practiced phase 1 a few times, you get the benefit of that very quickly. So you could do that every day very easily. Phase 2 is going to take longer, like she's already calculated, about an hour to get through it. Yes, if you did that a few times in the first 3 weeks, more concentrated, you'd only have to do phase 2 once a month to get the benefit. Right? But that's assuming you did phase 1 every day. Now, with all of these, particularly innate systems, but with all of these workshops, I encourage people to do it for at least 90 days, because the 90 days creates the neurology to maintain the experience independently of anything else. So even if you forgot about it, it would still be there as an independent neurological experience. So then you have the neurology matching the genetics, and that's very, very powerful. So if you did phase 1, like every day for a few weeks, and then did it maybe every second day or third day or something like that, for 90 days, you'd have phase 1 really drilled in and really a part of the nervous system. If in the first month you were able to do phase 2 once a week for that first month, right, and then once every couple of weeks for the 90 days, you'd have phase 2 drilled in pretty well as well, because it'll attach to phase 1. Right? But if you were just doing phase 2, you'd really have to do it a couple of times a week, at least once a week for 90 days for that 3 months to get that built in. But if you're doing that with phase 1, once a week for the first month and once every couple of weeks up to the 90 days would do the job pretty well. Yeah. And if you knew that you were having, say, a big competition, right? Like, I really wish I had known this stuff when I was playing judo, because I would have done this 2 days before the competitions, and I'm sure I would have done a lot better. But I didn't know it then. But I've since told people who are going on marathon runs, triathlete events, motorcycle races, car races, rally drivers. One guy was in a competition with cross-country cycling. I got them to do this stuff 2 days before the event, and they flew through it. They weren't tired at the end even. It was really amazing difference. So then I suggested they do neuropower training and get some real strength behind them. You do the neuropower training and you do the hormone stuff like Gregory's doing, and really you can accomplish some amazing things with your body. So I think the question is, if the person has problems actually rubbing the point, can you use this via deep states? Not really. Now, yes, you can. You can get the effect by using deep states, but that doesn't build the neurology that we want. Now, if the person has a problem with rubbing an actual point, then you need to sort that problem out. You need to help them get over that. Now, sometimes if you touch a point on somebody else, it's ticklish, so they always laugh. Oh, don't do that. Stop. Well, they do it. Usually people are not ticklish when they touch themselves. But if there's like a pain at the point, that's good. That's normal in a lot of people, because these points are painful when they're active. That's like them trying to tell you, pay attention to this point, give it a rub. And they may even become more painful to start with. That's okay. But when the pain goes down, they know they're getting better. Right? So you can tell them, oh, is it painful? Oh, that's really great. And they go, what? Because most people are programmed to the idea that pain is something that should be avoided. It's a terrible thing. It's a part of our body language. If you have a pain, your subconscious is trying to tell you something. So rub the point. Don't be afraid of the pain. Get the person to rub the point. They're not going to hurt themselves too much. So eventually that pain will come up and it'll go down. And tell them that. And when they see that happening, they go, oh, she really knows what she's talking about. She said that would happen and it did. And I feel really good. All right? So don't be afraid of the pain, because it's really usually not the point. How does this relate to in vitro fertilisation and the hormonal treatments that women have? If you can get them, and particularly when we do the infertility workshop, prepare for fertility, that'll give you a lot more tools to help them to become pregnant naturally anyway. If they've already had the hormones and you put them through this process, it will remove the damaging effect that some of those hormones can have. They actually quite often feel really bad when they're taking those hormones, and as a secondary reaction, they will lose a lot of fetuses in the process. Lots of miscarriages occur through that process, and it's because you're trying to create an artificial hormonal structure to support a pregnancy in a person that doesn't want that. And there are lots of reasons usually in their head as to why they don't want that, and that needs to be dealt with as well. Then doing this after they've had those hormones will you'll probably find lots of liver stuff. In fact, liver will be a problem for them getting pregnant in the first place. Because there's a lot of, anger and a lot of adrenaline, a lot of frustration in these people. And consciously they think getting pregnant will change everything, but subconsciously they know that doesn't work. And so they have big problems getting pregnant. But we'll talk more about that when we do the fertility program. Okay. Is it possible to do any harm if you rub the wrong points? What do you mean by the wrong points?
I mean, if you don't press in the right place.
Oh, so if you rub... Okay, so could this do any harm if you rub in somewhere that's not one of these reflexes, for example? No, you're just giving them a little massage. That's all. No, it'll either not work the way it's supposed to, or it will work, but it won't do any harm. Like if it was possible to do harm, then you'd never have a massage, because it ends up being the same thing. So it's really the idea of connecting this reflex to this reflex so that the brain gets reminded that that connection should be functioning better. And it does the job. It's not rubbing the points that does the job. It's what the person's mind does with using this combination. That's what does the work. You're just reminding the brain of what's already there. These reflexes are the same on everybody. The genetic system says, you have to have these points. But what our nervous system does is it learns other ways of doing things. And so the other ways are sometimes in conflict with what the genetic system has given you. So we're just reminding the subconscious about what the genetic system has given you and saying, hey, use this with this. It works. And the subconscious goes, I remember that. That was, oh, great. Oh, okay, good, I can do that. And that's what you're doing. You're not reinventing the points. You're not doing anything new except reminding the subconscious that they're there. And sometimes it's pretty stubborn and takes a bit of reminding. But we're going to remind it in a way over 90 days that means you create a nervous system that reminds the subconscious. Then it'll never go away. Then you can use that for lots of other things. You're building off the genetic system into the nervous system so the nervous system can learn to do better things later.